All right, let's jump right into this explainer with a situation that is probably going to feel very, very familiar to you. If you've spent any time in a therapy room, you have absolutely sat across from a client who is pushing back hard against the idea of changing a deeply ingrained habit. So today, we are zeroing in on one specific, absolutely crucial skill: how to recognize and respond to that pushback without falling into what we call the confrontation trap. Let's set up our first simulation.
Picture this. You've got a client sitting across from you. They cross their arms, look you dead in the eye and say, "I don't really see the point in quitting. I've been drinking for 20 years. It's just part of who I am." Now, if you're a caring professional, your brain immediately starts ringing alarm bells, right? You want to help. You want to fix it. You want to make sure they understand the risks.
And because of that, our natural human instinct is to immediately counter their resistance with facts and health warnings, which is exactly what happens in this wrong version of our scene. The counselor leans in and says, "But think about your health. Your liver can't keep taking this." And the client? They immediately deflect, saying, "I feel fine though."
Notice how pushing back with logic just makes the client dig their heels in deeper. The counselor tries again, right? "You might feel fine now, but the damage is happening whether you feel it or not." And how does the client respond? "I don't know. I just don't think it's that big a deal." So this whole exchange just ends with the client defending their drinking even harder than when they first walked in the room. Okay, let's wipe the whiteboard clean. Let's rewind that exact same scenario and see what happens when the counselor tries a totally different approach. The client kicks it off with the exact same statement. "I don't really see the point in quitting. I've been drinking for 20 years. It's just part of who I am."
Now, what's incredibly interesting here is the counselor's totally different response. Instead of warning or arguing, the counselor just says, "Drinking has been with you for a long time. It feels like it's woven into your life." The client nods. "Yeah, it's how I unwind. It's how I socialize. I don't know who I'd be without it." The counselor simply follows up with, "It's doing a lot of things for you right now."
Boom. Right there. That is a magical shift. By not arguing, the client actually starts to move on their own. The client replies, "It is, but I guess, I don't know, my wife keeps saying she's worried." By removing that friction, the client literally introduces their own reasons to change. So before we go any further, I want you to really think about these two contrasting scenes. Why did countering the resistance with facts backfire so spectacularly, while just simply reflecting it kept the door wide open? Well, in the first scene, the counselor took the side of change, which automatically forced the client to take the side of staying exactly the same. What we just witnessed in that very first scene was something called sustained talk. Sustained talk is basically any statement the client makes that supports not changing a behavior. And here is the crucial takeaway. It is not a permanent character flaw. It's not pathological denial. It is simply the status quo side of perfectly normal human ambivalence. Everyone, and I mean everyone, who is thinking about changing a huge habit feels totally torn between doing it and not doing it.
As counselors, we have this overwhelming urge to confront, correct, and fix. We call it the righting reflex. But when we give into that reflex and argue against sustained talk, it's like pushing against a brick wall. It creates discord and actually strengthens the client's resistance. On the flip side, as we saw in the second scene, simple reflection neutralizes it. When you reflect sustained talk, you're validating the client's feelings without necessarily agreeing with them. You're giving their ambivalence room to breathe.
Let's move on to our second scenario to see how this dynamic plays out when a client says they know they should stop using, but they just aren't ready yet. Here's the setup. The client says, "I'm not ready to stop using. I know I should, but I'm not there yet." All right, in the wrong version, the counselor peppers the client with rapid-fire problem-solving questions. What's stopping you? Is it fear? Withdrawal? The client gets defensive, saying, it's complicated." The counselor pushes a solution. "We have support programs that can help with all of that." The client replies, "I know, I'm just not ready." So the counselor pushes one last time. But the longer you wait, the harder it gets. And, predictably, awkward, absolute silence. Now let's look at the right version. The client starts again. "I'm not ready to stop using. I know I should, but I'm not there yet." The counselor uses what we call a double-sided reflection. Part of you already knows something needs to change, and another part isn't ready to move yet. The client immediately agrees. "Yeah, exactly. Both of those things are true." The counselor validates this. "That makes sense. It's a big thing to consider." And then the magic happens. The client says, "It is. I've been thinking about it more lately, though." Let's deconstruct why this works so incredibly well. Accepting and reflecting ambivalence actually propels the client toward change. It's wild, but it's true. When you use a double-sided reflection, you validate both their sustained talk and their internal desire for change. It normalizes this tug-of-war they're feeling. They realize they don't have to fight you to be heard, and once they feel truly heard, they are free to explore their own motivations for making a shift.
Let's see how this builds in our final scenario. This is the client who insists they only drink on weekends and thinks everyone else is just completely overreacting. The client says, "Honestly, I think people are overreacting. I only drink on weekends."
In our wrong version, the counselor immediately goes into fact-finding detective mode. How much do you drink on weekends? The client gets vague. I don't know, a few drinks. The counselor drops clinical data on them because more than 14 drinks a week is considered heavy drinking. The client gets defensive. Well, I don't drink that much. The counselor presses. Are you sure? Because it sounds like it might be more than you think. And the trap snaps shut as the client stubbornly locks in. I know how much I drink.
Let's reset one more time and look at the right version. The client says, "Honestly, I think people are overreacting. I only drink on weekends." The counselor simply and neutrally reflects the client's exact vantage point. From where you're standing, it doesn't look like a problem. The client agrees, feeling understood. Right, everyone else seems more worried than I am.
Now watch this masterful next move. The counselor gently highlights the discrepancy without taking a side. The people around you are seeing something that doesn't match what you're feeling. Notice there is absolutely zero judgment here. The counselor completely avoids taking the family side or judging the client's behavior. Because there was no confrontation to fight against, the client's defenses just drop. They organically generate their own argument for change, saying, "I mean, my brother did say something last month that kind of stayed with me." If the counselor had tried to force the brother's perspective on them, the client would have rejected it instantly. But by reflecting neutrally, the client brings it up themselves.
We can summarize the successful progression mapped out in all three of these scenarios into a really simple three-step framework you can use anywhere. Step 1. Listen to the sustained talk without giving in to your writing reflex. Do not argue. Step 2. Reflect the underlying meaning, feeling, or ambivalence back to the client. Step 3. Hold the space and wait for the client to generate their own change talk.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one highly practical thing you can try in your very next session tomorrow. We've seen today how powerful this one single skill can be. It's not about memorizing complex theories. It's about shifting how you respond in the moment.
So here is your challenge. When you hear sustained talk tomorrow, when a client tells you why they can't, won't, or aren't ready to change, can you simply reflect it back to them perfectly without adding a buck? Challenge your own writing reflex. Just hold the silence after your reflection, trust the process, and watch how quickly the client begins to argue for their own change. Because if one simple, non-judgmental reflection can neutralize 20 years of resistance, just imagine what else becomes possible when we stop fighting our clients and start truly listening.